get right into item 10, conduct of business. Item 10A, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with TJKM Transportation Consultants, Inc. for the Speed Zone Survey and Traffic Engineering Services project in an amount not to exceed $34,563.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Joseph Cervantes, and I'm an Associate Engineer for the Public Services Department, and I'm here to discuss the current item. California law requires that speed limits are updated every 5 years through an engineering and traffic survey. It is also called a speed zone survey. These surveys are required if the city intends to use electronic methods such as radar to enforce speeds and issue citations for speeding. If speed zone surveys are not updated, speeding citations can be overturned. Speed zone surveys also allow the city to modify speed limits by identifying the appropriate speed limits for each roadway based on prevailing speeds, accident rates, existing land use, and roadway design characteristics. In 2006, the city completed speed zone surveys for 32 locations, and the results of those surveys led to the adjustment of the posted speed limit for 17 corridors. In 2010, the city updated the speed zone surveys. At the time, 12 of the 32 locations received updated speed zone surveys. The remaining 20 locations were extended for 2 years since there was no significant changes in design, land use, or traffic volumes. The city now requires all previously surveyed corridors to be updated, and 3 additional locations will be surveyed. Staff issued a request for proposal, conducted an evaluation of the proposals received, and selected TJKM Transportation Consultants. TJKM specializes in traffic engineering and transportation planning and have successfully provided traffic engineering services and traffic surveys for several other Bay Area cities. They also successfully completed the most recent speed zone surveys for the city in 2010. The scope of work includes data collection and the preparation of a speed zone survey final report. Data collection, which includes the use of radar guns and tube counters, should have little to no impact to the neighborhoods. The speed zone survey final report will be presented to the Traffic Safety and Parking Committee for review and presented to the City Council for consideration. The City Council would consider the adoption of the speed zone survey and any speed limit changes if necessary. This project is part of the established CIP Neighborhood Traffic Calming Program and will take approximately 3 to 4 months to complete. Staff recommends the adoption of the resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with TJKM Transportation Consultants in the amount not to exceed $34,563. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Joseph?
Through the chair.
Michael?
I just wanted to clarify something. So my understanding after reading the way the law is written is that we are required to do this survey wherever we post a speed that's lower than the normally accepted, what I think it was referred to as prima facie or basic speed law. So those are the only areas that would be affected by the survey. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So there's only a handful of those. So I'm wondering, after we do our survey, we post a lower speed limit, do we then go back and evaluate how many violations occur within that area after the fact so that we know whether it was lowering that speed was effective or required, or we just assume that it's going to stay, that it's going to continue to be required?
In terms of evaluating the number of citations, it's extremely difficult to track that. From what I have been told by some officers, sometimes there's a high number of citations that are issued, and sometimes more than 100 per month. And to track how many, it's really difficult to do that. However, Every 5 years, the speed zone surveys are conducted, and they take into consideration the 85 percentile speed, and that is the measure by which the posted speed limit is identified. And there are instances in which, just because an 85 percentile speed is identified, that doesn't necessarily mean the nearest 5 mile per hour increment is used. Engineering analysis is also used to determine what the appropriate posted speed limit is.
Can you expand a little bit on 85 percentile?
So the intent of the speed zone survey is to capture free-flowing speed. So the survey results are typically not taken when it's peak time. So we want, the intent is to capture how fast cars really want to travel in a particular corridor. And so a minimum of 100 speed data points or cars collected, 100 in each direction. And then that is analyzed, and 85% of the measured speeds at or below that's the 85 percentile speed. I hope that makes sense.
So 85% of the cars are
Correct.
traveling at that speed?
Correct.
Okay. And then to make the determination, I noticed there was 2 new corridors that we want to evaluate. What criteria were used to select those 2 new corridors?
Okay, yes, to clarify, there were 3 additional locations that were identified to be included as part of this speed zone survey. That is City Parkway, College Road, and Cunningham Way. And this request came from the police department, and I believe it's because, perhaps the chief can answer.
All right, Chief, why these 2?
Perhaps.
Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me? No?
You're on.
Am I on now? Okay. Good evening. Yeah, the 3 new areas that we've requested for surveys are areas where we've received numerous complaints, not only based on speed but based on the conditions. You'll notice one of them is City Park Way, which is an area frequented by children and a lot of pedestrians. That, combined with complaints of speed in those areas, have resulted in us requesting the survey so we can adequately enforce speeding violators in those areas. Otherwise, it's almost impossible for us to issue a citation and have it stand up in any type of court.
But that goes back to my first question, where if there is a basic speed law in that area and we're merely enforcing it, it doesn't require the survey. It's only when we're doing something that's more restrictive. That was my understanding.
Yeah, I can address that. The law requires that if we're going to use radar, or what we use now is called LiDAR, it's basically the same thing, just different technology. From a law enforcement perspective, in order to enforce that citation in court, or to be able to stand up in front of a traffic commissioner and support that citation, we need a speed survey to adequately articulate what the safe speed of the roadway is in order to justify that. For example, if somebody should challenge a citation in court and there's no survey on file, they're not necessarily challenging the actions of the officer or even the reliability of the radar gun. Their challenge is that the posted speed limit is not appropriate, and that the speed survey for us allows us to stand in front of a traffic commissioner and say that the survey has been completed. This is a safe speed for the conditions of that roadway, and that's why we're operating LiDAR or radar. It's the only enforcement avenue that we have, because in these surface streets and corridors, there's no feasible way for officers to pace vehicles or in any other way adequately and effectively detail their speed or articulate how fast they're going.
Okay, but say in a residential neighborhood, the speed limit is what? 15?
25 is the
25,
prima
25.
facie, yeah.
So if somebody was doing 30 and they got a citation and we hadn't done the survey, you're saying that that wouldn't be valid, or is it only when we've gone below that 25 and say that for this particular neighborhood, for whatever special conditions, we want it to be 15?
Yeah,
Or-
the validity of the citation, the citation would still be valid should that citation be challenged, and if that citation was based solely on radar or LiDAR, if it was challenged, the traffic commissioner would more than likely void that citation because there was no survey on file.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
I hope not too many people are watching because we'll have a lot more traffic court subpoenas, but
Well,
that's,
through the chair, Chief, what concerns me is I take City Park Way many times throughout the day, and it's posted at 15 miles an hour. And believe me, I drive 15 miles an hour, and they're right on me. I mean, very few, and I'm sure from what the explanation is that we're going to be hard pressed to get 85 percentile, at 15 miles an hour. So if you're saying that a survey speed limit might be increased on City Park Way?
well, I'll leave that to the engineers. I will tell you that from an enforcement perspective, there is no other mechanism, especially on a street like City Park Way, for us to enforce a speed limit of any sort, simply because the length of the street itself and given the conditions, our speedometers and our patrol cars are calibrated annually just to make sure that when we do go to court, we can say that we adequately paced the car. And the only, if we're on the freeway or maybe El Camino, we can do that
It has to be radar.
occasionally. But in a scenario like that, the radar is the only effective measure, with the exception of an exhibition of speed. Where those are extreme conditions. But if somebody's traveling quickly through there, in order for us to articulate that or to prove that they're speeding, this is our main mechanism for doing that.
Thank you.
Chief, isn't it understood that if in a residential area, the speed limit is 25 unless otherwise posted?
Yes, the universal or prima facie speed in any residential area is 25 unless posted otherwise.
Thank you.
If I could just ask the chief to also respond to the very first question about whether we have the ability to identify how many citations we're issuing in what areas. I understood that to be your very first question.
Yes, thanks to the council and the investment you've made over the past few years in records management systems at the police department, we can do that for traffic studies, and we're happy to provide that statistical data. We do now enter all of our citations and can track pretty much when and where they were issued. So that is available, and I think when during the course of traffic studies, we're often asked to provide that data, and we do.
That would be great. I think that'd be a great data point to include in these sort of studies. So thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions of staff or action by the council?
Through the chair,
Irene?
I have a question. Chief, this might be your question. If the survey shows that that the posted speed limit is okay, but people run stop signs or they do other things that is dangerous for that, do you guys coordinate and figure out better ways to calm traffic or to maybe change your officer schedules so that they're there to give tickets? Or, I mean, is there a coordination between the different studies? And
Yes, this is just one of many traffic efforts that we have in place, and we work collaboratively to address those traffic issues. In fact, we've met regularly regarding a number of issues. Our traffic division strategically deploys personnel, or we have areas in the city that we consider hotspots, and that's based on complaints, it's based on collisions, it's based on the number of citations that are written in specific areas. So we compile that data, and again, another technology-driven program that the city's invested in over the past couple of years has an algorithm that kind of tells us when and where we should be looking for violators based on that information. The primary sources of data for that are complaints, collisions, and the number of citations that are issued at any specific area. So that's how we drive that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Through the chair, I'll adopt the resolution.
Councilmember Ibera.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye.